Hare Krishna. Will start with the invocation prayers. Invocation prayers are at the introduction page of Bhagavad Gita. Follow along. Om Jnanatirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijan Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Kupesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarupascha Kripa Sindhu Bhaivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Thank you all for coming. We welcome Nandita to our classes from today. She is also in the process of getting caught up on past recordings. So welcome. And Nandita, please feel free to ask any and all questions, even though you are joining partway through, because by asking questions is how one understands spirituality in an appropriate manner. Welcome. Before I continue with our Bhagavad Gita study from chapter 15, verse 16 onwards, so this last few weeks in November and December are known as Prabhupada Marathon, where there is a push for book distribution. So generally these times, most of the books are generally available. So I have on screen the schedule for this batch 6 and 7, that from mid-March 2026, Nectar of Instruction will start. Then mid-May, Nectar of Devotion will start. Then mid-August, Sri Upanishad will start. And mid-September, Srimad Bhagavatam will start. So this is a high-level schedule. So I request all of you to please get these books during this Prabhupada Marathon time, because these books generally will be available during these times. Other times, maybe Sri Upanishad may not be available. Other books will be. But some small centers, you may not find all the books all the time. So it's a good opportunity to get these books before December ends. Take a snapshot of what you have on the screen, and you have the cover titles of the books as well. All right, so we discussed at our last class how Krishna assists us in our material existence as well as for our spiritual progress. So in 15.15, Krishna said that Krishna is the compiler of Vedas and Krishna is the knower of Vedas. So as soon as Arjuna heard this, that Krishna is the compiler and knower of Vedas, so Arjuna asks, can you please tell me what is the essence of Vedas? Because Vedas are very huge and one may lose track of what exactly is the essence of the Vedas while you are reading verses one by one. Therefore, section 4 of chapter 15 is verses 16 to 18. Title is The Essence of Vedanta. How Krishna is Purushottama. These three verses are also known as Tri Shloki Gita. Three means three verses, Tri Shloki Gita. So the essence of Vedas is taught in these three verses, chapter 15, verse 16, 17, and 18. So we don't need to read Vedas. By reading these three verses, we already understand the essence of Vedas, and we have basically read the whole Vedas. Abhishek Prabhu, verse 16 translation, chapter 15.
Yeah, Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Chapter 15, Text 16. There are two classes of beings, the fallible and the infallible. In the material world, every living entity is fallible, and in the spiritual world, every living entity is infallible.
Akshara and Shara, two kinds of living beings, fallible and infallible. So the conditioned living beings are fallible, and conditioned living beings are everywhere in the material world. And in the spiritual world, every living being is liberated, is infallible. Deepa, verse 17 translation.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, verse 17. Beside these two, there is the greatest living personality, the supreme soul, the imperishable Lord Himself, who has entered the three worlds and is maintained in them. Hare Krishna.
So besides the fallible and the infallible living entities, meaning the conditioned and the liberated living entities, the supreme person is somebody else. This is very significant. So in 15.16, Krishna stated Shara means condition and Akshara means liberated. And here in 15.7, Krishna is saying that the supreme person is still somebody else beyond the Shara and Akshara. The supreme person, Purushottama, is beyond even the liberated souls. He is said to be Param Atma. Drashti, verse 18 translation.
Yes, Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Verse 18 translation. Because I am transcendental beyond both the fallible and infallible, and because I am the greatest, I am celebrated both in the world and in the Vedas as that supreme person.
So Krishna says, I am transcendental and the greatest. I am beyond both the Shara, which are fallible, and Akshara, the infallible. Therefore, I am celebrated as Purushottama in the worlds and in the Vedas. Therefore, chapter 15 is titled Purushottam Yoga. And Srila Prabhupada translates in English as the Yoga of the Supreme Person. So these three verses in chapter 15, verse 16, 17, 18 are the strongest refutation of Mayavad philosophy. Krishna does not leave any scope for interpretation. These verses are crystal clear that Krishna is Purushottama. Krishna is beyond even the liberated. When we become liberated, we don't merge into Krishna. Krishna still stays as a separate person, and the individual soul after liberation also maintains the individuality. We have discussed the same point in Bhagavad Gita 2.12. So this refutes Mayavad philosophy completely. Mayavadis think that Brahman effulgence is the highest, and after liberation we go and merge into Brahman effulgence. But Krishna clearly has said in 14.26-27 as well, in 14.27, that Krishna is the basis of Brahman effulgence, means Krishna is higher. And here further he is explaining that Krishna is Purushottama, he is above both the Shara and the Akshara. Questions, comments, realizations? So the three Shloki Gita summary and the conclusion is, first, Supreme Person is different from both the conditioned and liberated living entities. Liberated souls are not all pervading, but it is the Supreme Soul who is all pervading. Second, the Supreme Soul enters into and maintains all creation. Mayavadis think upon liberation we merge into Brahman and we become everything. That is not correct. Krishna says that Supreme Person is someone else, and that Supreme Person is all pervading. And third, Krishna states that Supreme Person is me, Krishna. I am Purushottama. This leads to section 5 of chapter 15, verses 19 and 20. Title is To Know Krishna, means to know everything. Matan Prabhu, verse 19 translation. Padma Kumar, verse 19 translation.
Sorry, Hare Krishna.
Matan, you can go ahead.
Whoever knows me as a supreme personality of Godhead without doubting is the knower of everything. He therefore engages himself in full devotional service to me, O son of Bharata.
Right, so one who understands Krishna as Purushottama, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he engages in devotional service to Krishna. Padma Kumar, read per quote paragraph number 1.
There are many philosophical speculation about the constitutional position of the living entities and the supreme absolute truth. Now, in this verse, the Supreme Personality of Godhead clearly explains that anyone who knows Lord Krishna to be the Supreme Person is actually the knower of everything. The imperfect knower goes on simply speculating about the absolute truth, but the perfect knower, without wasting his valuable time, engaged directly in Krishna consciousness, devotional service of the Supreme Lord. Throughout the whole of Bhagavad Gita, this fact is being stressed at every step, and still there are so many stubborn commentators on Bhagavad Gita who consider the supreme absolute truth and the living entities to be one and the same. Hare Krishna.
Right, so one who is perfect knower, he, without wasting his valuable time, he engages directly in Krishna conscious activities. When one understands that it is Krishna who is to be known, then why go through the various processes talked about in Vedas? There is no need for all these. One should just focus on devotional service to Krishna. Pratyush, paragraph number 2, verse 19.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Vedic knowledge is called Shruti, learning by oral reception. one should actually receive the Vedic message from authorities like Krishna and his representatives. Here, Krishna distinguishes everything very nicely, and one should be able to understand from the authorities. It is not that one should simply speculate academically. One should submissively hear from Bhagavad Gita that these living entities are always subordinate to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anyone who is able to understand this, according to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, knows the purpose of the Vedas. No one else knows the purpose of the Vedas.
So Prabhupada talks about various commentators who give wrong understanding. So I will tell you my own experience that before reading Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, I also read whatever Bhagavad Gita was available on the market. It was very confusing. And when I asked devotees at the temple that Bhagavad Gita says so and so, and they said, no, Bhagavad Gita doesn't say like that. And then they asked, which Bhagavad Gita are you reading? I was like, why are you asking which Bhagavad Gita? There should be only one. And they said, no, there are hundreds or even close to 500 different versions of Bhagavad Gita available in the market, and everyone have distorted the meaning of Bhagavad Gita. So we discussed the same point towards the end of chapter 4, that there is no restriction on somebody providing their view, but don't call it Bhagavad Gita. We have discussed the analogy that, say, here in Canada, there are two official languages, English and French. So when the Prime Minister is giving speech in one language, there's a translator translating the speech in another language. Now, if the translator is translating something completely different, well, that doesn't make the Prime Minister's speech. It is this person's comments who is translating it incorrectly. But people will think that it is coming from the Prime Minister. Similarly, all those who read Bhagavad Gita or these incorrect versions of Bhagavad Gita, in their head, they think they have read Bhagavad Gita, but it's not correct because they have read somebody's interpretation, but that is not Bhagavad Gita. That is that person's viewpoint. It is not Krishna's viewpoint. So it is Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita which says as it is. And this is what Krishna has given to us, and that's what we should be reading. In paragraph number 3, Prabhupada explains the word bhajati means devotional service. And Srila Prabhupada concludes by saying that anyone, after speculating for hundreds and thousands of lives, if he does not come to the point that Krishna is Supreme Personality of Godhead and that he has to surrender to Krishna, then all his speculation for so many years and so many lives is a useless waste of time. Prabhupada calls it Shrama Eva Hi Kevalam. This comes from Bhagavatam 1.2.8. Shrama Eva Hi Kevalam. The last verse for chapter 15, follow me, 20 translation.
Hare Krishna. 15.20 translation. This is the most confidential part of the Vedic scriptures, O sinless one, and it is disclosed now by me. Whoever understands this will become wise, and his endeavors will know perfection. Thank you.
So Vedas talk about so many things, but their ultimate purpose is to direct us towards Krishna. This is confidential knowledge. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it describes that Brahmaji studied Vedas, first time he studied, Brahmaji thought the conclusion of Vedas was Karmakanda. Second time, Brahmaji, when he read Vedas, he thought conclusion is Gyan Kanda. And when he read Vedas for the third time, that's when Brahmaji came to the conclusion, correct conclusion, that it is bhakti. Conclusion is bhakti. This is the most confidential knowledge that Krishna is Purushottama. Krishna is the goal of Vedas. Priyadarshini, purport 20, paragraph number 1.
From purport from which para, Prabhuji?
Verse 20, paragraph number 1.
Purport, the Lord clearly explains here that this is the substance of all revealed scriptures, and one should understand this as it is given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, one will become intelligent and perfect in transcendental knowledge. In other words, by understanding this philosophy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and engaging in His transcendental service, everyone can become freed from all contaminations of the moods of material nature. Devotional service is a process of spiritual understanding. Wherever devotional service exists, the material contamination cannot coexist. Devotional service to the Lord and the Lord Himself are one and the same because they are spiritual. Devotional service takes place within the internal energy of the Supreme Lord. The Lord is said to be the sun, and ignorance is called darkness. Where the sun is present, there is no question of darkness. Therefore, whenever devotional service is present under the proper guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, there is no question of ignorance. Hare Krishna.
Prabhupada explains that devotional service is a process of spiritual understanding. Devotional service takes place under the internal energy. So spiritual understanding does not come overnight. Therefore, one has to follow a process, and best process is devotional service. And Prabhupada says, wherever devotional service exists, material contamination cannot exist. Raksha, rest of the purport.
Hare Krishna. Everyone must take to this consciousness of Krishna and engage in devotional service to become intelligent and purified. Unless one comes to this position of understanding Krishna and engages in devotional service, however intelligent he may be in the estimation of some common man, he is not perfectly intelligent. The word anaga by which Arjuna is addressed is significant. Anaga, O sinless one, means that unless one is free from all sinful reactions, it is very difficult to understand Krishna. One has to become free from all contamination, all sinful activities, then he can understand. But devotional service is so pure and potent that once one is engaged in devotional service, he automatically comes to the stage of sinlessness. Hare Krishna. Should I read, Prabhuji?
Read complete with the full purport.
Okay. While one is performing devotional service in the association of pure devotees in full Krishna consciousness, there are certain things which require to be vanquished altogether. The most important thing one has to surmount is weakness of the heart. The first fall down is caused by the desire to lord it over material nature. Thus one gives up the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Lord. The second weakness of the heart is that as one increases the propensity to lord it over material nature, he becomes attached to matter and the possession of matter. The problems of material existence are due to these weaknesses of the heart. In this chapter, the first 5 verses describe the process of freeing oneself from these weaknesses of heart, and the rest of the chapter from 6th verse through the end discusses Purushottama Yoga. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport to the 15th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of Purushottama Yoga, the yoga of the Supreme Person. Hare Krishna.
So Prabhupada says the first reason for fall down is caused by the desire to lord it over material nature. Thus one gives up the desire to serve the Lord. And second is the weakness of the heart, is that one increases the propensity to lord it over material nature. The problems of material existence are due to weakness of the heart. So weakness of the heart means instead of serving Krishna with determination, I cave into lower desires and serving my senses. So a quick summary of chapter 15 is that first in the previous chapter 14, Krishna explained that Bhagwan is the ultimate reality. Bhagwan is Purushottama, the greatest person. And in chapter 15, the same point is explained, that Bhagwan is Purushottama. The title is therefore Purushottam Yoga, the Yoga of the Supreme. So chapter 15 starts with upside down banyan tree analogy, emphasizing detachment. The next section says that without detachment, one will have to continue the cycle of birth and death. Therefore, one needs to have Jnana Chakshu. But what if someone does not have Jnana Chakshu for realizing Atma Tattva? Is his spirituality stopped? No, his spirituality is not stopped. Spirituality is still possible even for materialistic people by seeing the hand of Krishna even at material level plus at spiritual level. Then comes the three shloki Gita, which leads to the conclusion that Krishna is Purushottama. And knowing Krishna as Purushottama, it should result in doing devotional service to Krishna. Krishna is the highest reality, and devotional service to Krishna is the highest and easier process to liberation. Chapter 15 is among the shortest chapters with 20 verses, same as chapter 12. There's significant amount of information. The key points in chapter 15 are that Krishna is Purushottama, the importance of taking shelter and surrender to Krishna, plus the detachment point through the analysis of the upside down banyan tree, plus the first step in developing Jnana Chakshu is by appreciating the hand of God in everything we need to live in this material world. Plus 3 Shloki Gita establishes the most confidential knowledge. Krishna is Purushottama, or do devotional service to Krishna. That ends chapter 15. Any questions, comments, realizations? All right, let's start chapter 16. At the start of chapter 16, I will do a lot of talking to set the base before we start reading the verses. So chapter 16 in Sanskrit is titled Daivi Asura Sampad Vibhag Yoga. I will repeat. Chapter 16 in Sanskrit is Daivi Asura Sampad Vibhag Yoga. I will explain. And in English is the divine and the demoniac natures. So Sampad or Sampati means wealth. And Sampad, we'll discuss in 16.3, also means qualities. So Sampad means this is what one considers to be his wealth. So, and Vibhag means division. So divine people consider certain qualities to be their wealth, and demoniac people consider certain qualities to be their wealth. So ungodly and demoniac people, they think that arrogance, harshness are their strengths. This is their wealth. They think lust is good. And I want to have these more and more and more so that I can enjoy more and more. This is demoniac. And these qualities become their nature. So sampad, that my wealth or my qualities, what I consider as my wealth, I will hold very close to me. And therefore, this becomes my nature. Therefore, the title, Daivi Asura. So Daivi means divine. Asura means demoniac. So Daivi Asura Sampad Vibhag Yoga, the divine and demoniac natures. The link between chapter 15 and chapter 16 is from the upside down banyan tree analogy we have discussed in chapter 13, verse number 22. That 13.22 is the seed of material existence, Purusha Prakriti Stohi. That living entity is situated in material nature because of Bhumte Prakriti Jan Kuran. Bhumte, the enjoying mentality. The modes water the seed described in 13.22, as well as the modes water the tree of material existence described in chapter 15. So these modes are discussed in chapter 14. Chapter 15 describes the tree of material existence with an analogy of the upside down banyan tree. And the tree came from the 13.22 Bhumte, the enjoying mentality of the soul. Therefore, 13.22 is the seed verse. Chapter 15 describes to become disentangled from the tree by detachment and determination. Take shelter of Purushottama and worship Purushottama. So chapter 16 describes the upper and lower extremes of the tree. Therefore, it is the divine and the demoniac, the two extremes. So Krishna describes divine qualities in the first three verses, and the rest of the chapter is on demoniac nature. The sections of chapter 16, make note, section 1 is verses 1 to 9, divine and demoniac qualities. So Krishna describes divine qualities in verses 1 to 3. There are 26 divine qualities described. And Krishna describes demoniac qualities in verses 4 to 9. Section 2 is verses 10 to 18. Activities of the demoniac. Whatever qualities I have, they get reflected in the activities that I do. Section 3 is verses 19 to 22. consequences and causes of demoniac activities. Meaning, what is the result and what makes people do these demoniac activities. Section 4 is verses 23 to 24. The choice between divine and demoniac. So the last verses describe or outline the choices. Whether we want to act in divine way or demoniac way. So if I want to act in divine way, how to act in divine way is described that one has to act according to Shastra. So verse this 23-24, the word Shastram with him will come, means we have to act according to scriptures. Everybody got the divisions? Silence. Yes,
Prabhuji,
Prabhuji.
are you able to repeat
Yes,
number
Prabhuji.
1 and 2 for the section 1?
Okay, I'll repeat all four.
Okay, thank you.
Section 1 is verses 1 to 9, divine and demoniac qualities. Krishna describes 26 divine qualities in verses 1 to 3. And Krishna describes demoniac qualities in verses 4 to 9. 26 divine qualities in verses 1 to 3. And then demoniac qualities in verses 4 to 9. Section 2 is verses 10 to 18. Activities of demoniac. Whatever qualities I have, they get reflected in the activities that I do. Section 3, verses 19 to 22. Consequences and causes of demoniac activities. What is the result of demoniac activities and what makes people do these demoniac activities? Section 4, verses 23 to 24. The choice between divine and demoniac. These verses outlines the choices, whether we want to act in divine ways or demoniac ways. If we want to act in divine way, how to act in divine way is Shastram Vidim, to act according to scriptures. Questions, comments, realizations so far? So I have a question for all of you. All of you, please try to answer. Very important question to understand. So the first 3 verses of chapter 16 are divine qualities. And rest of the chapter is basically on demoniac. So my question is, do we discuss only the first 3 verses of divine qualities? And second question is, why do I need to study demoniac qualities? Everybody, please try to answer. Shreyanshi.
I feel like we have been given so many wrong interpretations uh, in because we are not referring to scriptures anyway. Like we are like referring to everything that is not Krishna these days. So there's a lot of confusion, like who we look up to, and there are so many wrong set of examples that have been set in. So I think to clarify that, we need a long list of discussion, like what shouldn't be done.
Okay, very good. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. One thing is that we should know what should be done by knowing the scriptures. And another thing is that we should also know about the demonic activities, because in case of any trigger situation or anything, being in this material world, we are also subjected to this three modes: goodness, ignorance, and passion. So we should know about them also, so we can correct ourselves.
Okay. Parth, Pratyush, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, as per my view, to make the right choice and know which one is demoniac, that is to be curbed by way of referring the scriptural directions. Hare
Okay.
Krishna.
Shruti and Riya have also commented something similarly in the chat. Okay. Abhishek.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Prabhuji, just like in first chapter, we read qualities of Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra to rule them out from our own life, like the materialistic mindset. So similar understanding can be seen here, that we try to rule out these qualities.
Okay. Rest of you have not answered. Okay. Subhash Prabhu is also correct. Maybe we know more of the disease we can cure. Okay. Rest of you who have not answered, I asked everyone to answer. Do I study only the first three verses of divine qualities? Why do I need to study the demoniac qualities? Anybody wants to develop demoniac qualities?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. I think we need to study both divine and the demoniac to understand what we should do and what we should avoid. Just to give an example, a knife can be used to either, in a surgery to help someone, or it can be used to stab someone. So we need to understand what are the strengths and drawbacks of everything.
Okay. All right. Rest of you, many of you have not answered. Okay. Padma Kumar only wants to study the divine. Okay. Deepa.
Prabhuji, I feel that I have like demonic traits in me, so listening to it, I must listen to eliminate them.
Okay. Shreyanshi.
Yes, Prabhuji, like it's mentioned before that in the age of Kali, like having good speech has become so important that having intention having a pure intention is overlooked these days.
Very good. Yeah. All very good points. That and what Shreyanshi also said, and Abhishek also pointed it out. From chapter 1, we have discussed that the speech is considered to be a quality of somebody who is elevated, but speech is not the criteria to determine spirituality. Duryodhan had very nice political speech, but he had evil intentions. So we have to know people from their intentions. Nandita is also correct to recognize and avoid them, so we can choose the right path and improve ourselves. Very good. So let me summarize and answer all of you very good correct answers. That in general, if evil is depicted as someone ugly looking, maybe with horns and tails, then it's easy to identify and we'll avoid. But as Shreyanshi correctly pointed out, that in today's days, good-looking person have a lot of charisma, but have evil intentions. So what defines an evil person is not their appearance, but their conscience, their qualities, and their motivation. So chapter 16 discusses qualities of divine and demoniac natures. so that we can develop the divine qualities as well as avoid the demoniac qualities. We'll soon read where Krishna will explain that every single living entity is born with both sets of qualities, divine and demoniac. Everyone has it. Everyone. Every single one. All demoniac, all divine qualities, everyone has it. It's just that certain qualities are dominant. So divine person will have divine qualities as dominant, and demoniac person like Duryodhan will have demoniac qualities as dominant. So evil people may look very attractive. Example, Kauravas are the primary villains in Mahabharata. They are humans. They don't look like Rakshas with horns and tails. No, they are normal humans, and their head Duryodhan is a very handsome and charismatic personality that he is able to get so many followers. Despite his outer attractiveness, Duryodhan has evil intentions. So, chapter 16 states demoniac people often acquire wealth, positions, success, etc., and disguise their demoniac actions. Actually, when evil is ugly, say with horns and tails, it is easy to identify and to stay away from it. But when evil appears to be somebody very charismatic, handsome, and classic, it is much easier to get influenced by those people, even though they may have demoniac intentions. By understanding that evil is more a matter of inner intention rather than outer appearance, we can be then more aware of who we associate with, and more importantly, who we get influenced by. If people are acting to exploit others, to fulfill their lower desires of lust, anger, greed, etc., then they are evil. Even if they are known as celebrities in societies. Exactly what Shreyanshi was pointing out. So from Bhagavad Gita, we can see beyond people's outer appearance and see their actual substance and actual character. Now, this same question will apply to Varna and Ashram qualities. That if I am Shudra, why do I need to study the qualities of other Varnas, of Brahmana, Kshatriya, and Vaishya? The answer is the same. That by understanding all qualities, one can judge that the other person is in a particular Varna. Say if a person is a Kshatriya or is a Brahmana, so he will have certain qualities. So other person may have more wealth because he is Kshatriya. Well, then why do I have to become envious of that other person? No, it is his Varna, it is his karma because of which he has so and so wealth. I don't have to become envious. And I have appropriate wealth according to my Varna. So section 1, verses 1 to 9, title is Divine and Demoniac Qualities. Krishna describes divine qualities, 26 divine qualities in verses 1, 2, and 3. And then Krishna describes demoniac qualities in verses 4 to 9. Actually, from verse 4 onwards, the whole chapter is about demoniac nature. So Krishna's focus of talking about these divine and demoniac natures is to help us understand that divine nature leads to liberation, while demoniac nature leads to bondage. Therefore, we should choose to act according to divine nature all the time. All these godly qualities are to be developed by everyone, and in certain varnas and certain ashrams, certain qualities are specifically required. So Srila Prabhupada explains all these 26 qualities according to varna and ashram, that one needs to cultivate all these qualities. So the last point in the chat, Shrevanshi, is also correct that these demoniac people, they donate, they do good, and they sympathize, they sit among us, have social circle, but silently they manipulate us. And what Shrevanshi is just saying is actually coming up in chapter 16 verses. So it's a very practical chapter as well. Questions, comments, realizations before we start reading verses and discussing all of these qualities? Shrevanshi.
Prabhuji, as you mentioned, like the varnas thing, like, if you are in different varna, you see another varna and you see like, oh, they are so privileged and whatever. I feel like every varna has its own struggle.
Yeah, you are absolutely correct. So my disease is my particular body, meaning I am Shudra. My disease is Shudra, body is my disease. And all of us have unique bodies. We have our unique diseases. Brahmana will have his disease in a Brahmana body. Kshatriya similarly, Vaishya similarly. So I've given this example earlier that when somebody is in a hospital and doctor gives the patient a medication, the patient cannot say that I will take medication of the patient on the next bed. No, his medication will be according to his disease. My medication will be according to my disease. So I cannot say that I will become a Brahmana and it becomes easier. No, it doesn't work that way. They already discussed this point in chapter 3 at the start, that Arjuna was also trying to do this, that I will go to forest and meditate. But it doesn't work that way, that you are in Kshatriya body, well then you will live and act according to Kshatriya body. I am in Shudra body, well then I will live and act according to Shudra body. Brahmana will live according to Brahmana body. And every single one have their respective varna and their respective body as their disease, and they have to cure their disease while doing the karma of their respective varna. Very good. Questions, comments, realizations so far? All right, Ria, chapter 16, verse 1 to 3 translation, pretty long verse.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Chapter 16, verse 1 to 3. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, fearlessness, purification of one's existence, cultivation of spiritual knowledge, charity, self-control, performance of sacrifice, study of the Vedas, austerity, simplicity, non-violence, truthfulness, freedom from anger, renunciation, tranquility, aversion to fault-finding, compassion for all living entities, freedom from covetousness, gentleness, modesty, steady determination, vigor, forgiveness, fortitude, cleanliness, and freedom from envy and from the passion for honor. These transcendental qualities, O son of Bharata, belong to godly men endowed with divine nature. Hare Krishna.
So we'll discuss many of these qualities in detail. Let's first read purport paragraph number 1. Prabhupada provides the background details of chapter 16 that we just discussed a few minutes ago. Read to purport paragraph number 1.
Hare Krishna. In the beginning of the 15th chapter, the banyan tree of this material world was explained. The extra roots coming out of it were compared to the creative activities of the living entities, some auspicious, some inauspicious. In the 9th chapter also, the Devas or godly and the Asuras, the ungodly or demons, were explained. Now, according to Vedic rites, activities in the mode of goodness are considered auspicious for progress on the path of liberation, and such activities are known as Devi Prakriti, transcendental by nature. Those who are situated in the transcendental nature make progress on the path of liberation. For those who are acting in the modes of passion and ignorance, on the other hand, there is no possibility of liberation. Either they will have to remain in this material world as human beings, or they will descend among the species of animals or even lower life forms. In this 16th chapter, the Lord explains both the transcendental nature and its attendant qualities, and the demoniac nature and its qualities. He also explains the advantages and disadvantages of these qualities. Hare Krishna.
Right, so we discuss all these points at the start of this chapter 16, what Prabhupada is explaining in the first verse, purport paragraph 1. So let's read paragraph number 2. The word abhijjatsya is explained that those with divine qualities, they have these qualities from birth itself. Shreyanshi, purport paragraph number 2, chapter 16, verses 1, 2, and 3.
Prabhuji, put 1, 2.
Second paragraph, it starts the word abhijjatsya.
Okay. The word Abhijatasya in reference to one born of transcendental qualities or godly tendencies is very significant. To beget a child in a godly atmosphere is known in the Vedic scriptures as Garbhadan Samskara. If the parents want a child in the godly qualities, they should follow the 10 principles recommended for the social life of the human being. In Bhagavad Gita, we have studied also before that sex life for begetting a good child is Krishna himself. Sex life is not condemned provided the process is used in Krishna consciousness. Those who are in Krishna consciousness at least should not beget children like cats and dogs, but should beget them so that they may become Krishna conscious after birth. That should be the advantage of children born of a father and mother absorbed in Krishna consciousness.
So nature is not just internal, but nature is also shaped by how parents nurture as well as the culture around us. Everyone has free will. Parents can do their best to protect and nurture a child. So protection is physical, emotional, as well as spiritual. Emotional means child should feel that he is cared and loved. Spiritual means child should be facilitated so that the child can make the right choices that will take one closer to Krishna. Shruti will read purport paragraph number 3 and paragraph number 4. I will stop you partway through. It talks about spiritual master of Brahmana also up to that point.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. The social institution known as Vanashrama Dharma, the institution dividing society into 4 divisions of social life and 4 occupational divisions or caste, is not meant to divide the human society according to birth. Such divisions are in terms of educational qualifications. They are to keep the society in a state of peace and prosperity. The qualities mentioned herein are explained as transcendental qualities meant for making a person progress in spiritual understanding so that he can get liberated from the material world. In the Vanasashrama institution, the sannyasi or the person in the renounced order of life is considered to be the head or the spiritual master of all the social status and orders. A Brahmana is considered to be the spiritual master of the three other sections of the society, namely the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Shudras. But not a sannyasi who is on the top of the institution is considered to be the spiritual master of the Brahmanas also.
Right? So Prabhupada lays the foundation for Varna and Ashram, and all qualities from this point on. Prabhupada, like in paragraphs, explains that this particular quality, specifically a particular Varna, should have. So we'll discuss. For these verses, there's very little reading to do. You will read by yourself. The purport is spectacular. The definition of all qualities Prabhupada has given is spectacular. So you will definitely read. Right now, I will discuss many of these qualities one after the other. Any questions, comments, realizations so far? All right. So from all these, Prabhupada's spectacular explanation of each of these qualities, the first one starts from verse number 1, first line, is about fearless and purification of one's existence. So first is abhayam, means fearlessness. So fearlessness does not come by absence of fear. Fearlessness comes by the presence of a cause that dwarfs fear. We have discussed this in chapter 1. The Prabhupada explains, fearlessness comes by absorbing in the cause. Different people can have different causes. Example, a soldier has love for his nation. He may overcome the natural fear of bodily injury, and thus he is able to fight a war. But this is not the highest cause. Highest cause is pure devotion to Krishna, because this alone leads to eternal benefits. Devotee has fearlessness because has awareness of the presence of Krishna, and Krishna dwarfs fear. The more we become aware of Krishna as the super soul in the heart, the more we will be fearless. Srila Prabhupada explains that these godly qualities, abhayam, fearlessness, comes from awareness of Krishna. Because no problem can be bigger than Krishna. So don't tell Krishna how big your problems are. Rather, tell your problems how big Krishna is. When you have big problems, remember Krishna more. Then the problems becomes dwarfed. Hence, by remembering Krishna, we can become fearless. Srila Prabhupada explains that these various qualities are as per different varnas. All godly people have to have these qualities in general. But certain qualities are more important for certain varnas. Example, abhayam or fearlessness is a quality that is to be cultivated by sannyasi. Generally, we get security by having people around us. That if something happens to me, there are others to take care of me. But sannyasi has to leave everyone and travel alone. Therefore, sannyasi requires to be fearless. That fearlessness comes by taking shelter of Krishna. by remembering Krishna's presence internally. Next is Sattva Samshuddhi. Sattva means existence and Samshuddhi means purification. So, purification of one's existence. So, there are many impurities, and Srila Prabhupada focuses on the impurity of lust. How do we free ourselves from lust? The answer is by avoiding external and internal triggers. External triggers are association with members of opposite sex. And internal triggers are recollection of past memories of sensual pleasures. Therefore, sannyasis are not meant to associate closely with women. Srila Prabhupada gives the example of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who was very strict. Female devotees would offer obeisances from a distance. The idea is one has to focus on purification by following certain rules and regulation. The point is not of hatred of women. Rather, the focus is on one's purification. The important point is that it is not meant to disrespect women. Rather, it is simply for maintaining the purity and the purification of existence. The general point is that sannyasis are meant to focus on purification of existence. Srila Prabhupada talks about qualities of ashram. So the 4 ashrams are sannyasi is the highest, then brahmachari, grahastha, and vanaprastha. So the progression is brahmachari, then grahastha, then vanaprastha, and then sannyasi. The next quality described is Jnana Yoga Vyavasthiti, that cultivation of knowledge. Srila Prabhupada says, sannyasi life is meant for distributing knowledge to the householders and others who have forgotten their real life of spiritual advancement. Regular contact with sannyasi reminds the householders that spirituality is an important part of life. So sannyasis go door to beg, not because sannyasis are beggars. Rather, begging is a means by which sannyasi can interact with householders and give householders some transcendental knowledge. It is important to cultivate and share knowledge. Next quality is charity. Charity is important for spiritual life and specifically for grahasthas. Charity is not just an activity. Rather, charity is a mentality. Mentality is developed by habit. The idea is to develop the mentality of giving, therefore should give regularly, even if it is a small amount. Some people say that in future when I earn huge amount, then I will donate huge amount. So people who postpone giving charity so that they can give big lump sum in future, often they don't give anything at all because the habit of giving has not been developed. Rather, the habit of holding money has been developed. So regularity of charity creates the mentality of giving. Charity is the quality for grahasthas. If we don't develop the habit of giving, then mind comes up with lot of demands. Therefore, charity should be focused on as a habit, as a mentality. So all of you can, whenever you have questions, you can raise hand and ask. I will otherwise continue discussing one point after the other for all these qualities. Next quality is Dhamma, means sense control. Is required for everyone, but is specifically required for grahasthas. The purpose of marriage is not just an arrangement for sense gratification. Rather, grahastha life is an arrangement for helping both spouses to move together closer to Krishna. Marriage is not an arrangement for sensual gratification. Rather, marriage is actually an arrangement for spiritual elevation. Over a period of time, husband and wife come to the level of practicing spiritual life seriously, that they start seeing each other not so much as male and female for mutual gratification. Rather, they start seeing each other spiritually as partners in spiritual journey, as fellow souls, as fellow devotees who are moving forward in spiritual journey. So this sort of relationship to develop, it requires self-control. Next quality is yajna or sacrifice. Srila Prabhupada states that there are many yajnas. In Kali Yuga, primarily, the yajna is the Sankirtana yajna, the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. This is meant for everyone. Other yajnas are not possible in Kali Yuga at all. There are no qualified brahmanas to perform those yajnas. All those so-called brahmanas in India performing those yajnas in India, they are useless. Next quality is swadhyaya, means self-study. Srila Prabhupada states swadhyaya or self-study is specifically meant for brahmachari. Brahmacharya is student life. Students focus on studying. By studying Vedic literature in student life, one develops a deep understanding of scripture, and eventually when brahmachari becomes grahastha, the person will not become entangled in life because the person recognizes that the purpose of life is not material enjoyment, rather is spirituality. And therefore, when the brahmachari becomes a grahastha, one can continue to advance spiritually and not get entangled because he is trained during his brahmachari lifestyle. So perfect example I've described many times from the Toronto temple, our dear Dwarkanath Prabhu is a perfect example. There are others, I'm just quoting one, that Dwarkanath Prabhu was a brahmachari living in the temple ashram, wearing orange dress, and then he decided, okay, now I need to get married. So he then moved to the Grahastha life. He got married recently. And look, his wife is also involved in devotional service. His wife is also now initiated. Why? Because both of them know that from their brahmachari lifestyle, that spirituality is the important point in life, and both husband and wife have to help each other grow spiritually. So if you actually, for those of you who are in Toronto, next time you meet Dwarkanath Prabhu, thank him to show us with example, and also thank Dwarkanath Prabhu's wife that how gentle she is, how she is helping Dwarkanath Prabhu also in devotional services. So some of you have seen, you may not recognize that this particular Vaishnavi is Dwarkanath Prabhu's wife, but she is generally there sometimes at the temple when we do services. So thank both of them to show us live exactly what Prabhupada has described in Bhagavad Gita and what Krishna is explaining us in these verses. So the purpose of scriptural study is to help understand all this. That purpose of life is not sense gratification, rather spirituality. Therefore, everyone has to do swadhyaya, self-study. But brahmachari life is specifically focused on swadhyaya, self-study. Next quality is tapa. Tapa means austerity. Is also required for everyone and specifically for those who are in retired life, vanaprastha lifestyle. In grahastha life, there are comforts in the household life, and when one takes vanaprastha, things are a little difficult. Hence, focus is on accepting the austerity so that one can effectively practice spiritual life. So vanaprastha life is almost extinct today. There are sannyasis in ISKCON. Srila Prabhupada did not recommend devotees to go to jungle during vanaprastha. This is not practical in Kali Yuga. And in Bhagavatam, Prabhupada describes about vanaprastha's idea is to spend more time on spirituality. So if somebody is planning to go to jungle to meet saintly people, but in Kali Yuga, there are very few jungles left, plus there are not that many saintly people in jungle. So saintly people live in temples. So even if it's not entirely possible to live household life, a person can minimize worldly engagements and increase spiritual engagements. So those devotees in the Bhagavatam class, we had recently discussed in Canto 1 this point, how to increase spirituality more and more. It's coming up discussion in Canto 1 as well as in Canto 2, where Prabhupada says that last 15-20 years of life, one should set aside to specifically focus on spiritual topics, spiritual activities only. The idea should be devotee should increase one's spiritual involvement during the vanaprastha stage of life. In Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, it describes that one should have a plan on the day of getting married. One should have a plan of how one will train children so that children can handle household affairs, so that parents can focus almost entirely on spirituality. How many make the plan on the day of marriage to plan vanaprastha life? Not many, probably no one. So this is what Bhagavatam describes, that on the day you get married, plan your vanaprastha life. That how I will train children and give the responsibilities for household affairs to children so that I can focus on spirituality. Prabhupada emphasizes that the entire Varnashram system is meant for tapasya. Without austerity, without tapasya, no human being can get liberation. Why? Because when we are sick, we have to take treatment, and treatment involves following certain processes. And not all of those processes are likable to us. Therefore, we should be ready to do what is not likable to us so that we can make steady spiritual advancement. Next quality is arjavam, simplicity or truthfulness, straightforward, applies to all. Everyone is meant to be truthful, and specifically Brahmanas. Next quality is ahimsa, non-violence. Now, non-violence is not a primary characteristic for Kshatriya. Non-violence is meant for Brahmanas. Brahmana is meant to be forgiving. In extreme situations, not for self-defense, but for welfare of others, Brahmana may resort to violence. So this is described in Srimad Bhagavatam in Canto 4 with the story of King Vena. That Vena was a demoniac king and he did not allow spirituality at all and had done a lot of atrocities on the citizens. So the Brahmana took the extreme step of killing the king Vena. Now the killing was not done physically. The killing was done via mantras and the king died, yes, but it was by chanting the mantras. So this is extreme circumstances, but it was not for their own self. It was for the welfare of the citizens. And Prabhupada explains elevated definition of non-violence, that real ahimsa, real non-violence means not to check one's spiritual progress. So if you have the ability to preach and if you don't preach, well, you are committing violence. Therefore, whosoever you meet, talk about Krishna, talk about Bhagavad Gita. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Jare dekho, tare kaho Krishna upadesh. That whosoever you meet, wherever you go, whosoever you see, talk to them about Krishna. Talk to them about Bhagavad Gita. Bring them to our classes so that they can come closer to Krishna. So animals are also in their own pace moving forward, and therefore one should not cause violence to animals, because if you kill an animal, then you are disturbing the evolution cycle of that animal. Means that particular animal died before his karma was exhausted, so that the animal can go to the next life form in the evolution. But if that animal gets killed prematurely, well, then he will have to go back and take birth again in that same bodily form to exhaust the leftover karma. Next quality is akrodha, or not getting angry. Even if there is provocation, one should be tolerant, because when one becomes angry, his whole body becomes polluted. Now, body becomes polluted. Normally, one would assume that anarthas would pollute the mind. So certainly the anarthas pollute the mind. Lust, anger, greed pollutes the mind. And simultaneously, whatever happens in the mind also affects the body. When we become angry, we also become physically disturbed by anger. These are the characteristics of passion and ignorance. These are undesirable because they contaminate the whole body. How to tolerate anger? By remembering that there is a higher purpose of life. Small, small things, provocation, will always keep happening. You can measure your own advancement in one's ability to tolerate provoking situations. When there is a reason to be angry, but we stay calm, that is tolerance. Next quality is very, very important. It's also going to be an eye-opener short homework lecture that I will send you. I will pause here for any questions, comments, realizations so far.
Prabhuji, like there are also qualities described earlier which are similar, like in chapter 2 and 12,
Yeah.
where there are. So, like, uh, is there differences here than those?
There are no
There,
differences. There are, it's not just these, they are described throughout Bhagavad Gita. In a particular context, those qualities are described. They are all essentially similar qualities. I would not say similar, they are same qualities, just described multiple times.
thank you, Prabhuji.
Parth Pratyush.
Prabhuji, on the point of anger, is anger always a negative emotion, or sometimes when we feel angry, we can channelize that anger into something productive or into a creative force? Uh, in my example, uh, if I am feeling angry about something, or like if I have procrastinated or not done any particular work, I convert that anger into like more motivation for me. So is that a bad thing or a good thing? Please explain.
Stay away from anger. On Srimad Bhagavatam, in Canto 4, there's a verse Prabhupada has described. Anger is very detrimental. And in entire spiritual scriptures, there are three well-known examples of those who have used anger in Krishna's service. The three examples are Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Krishna himself, Arjuna fighting the Kurukshetra war fiercely, and Hanuman burning Lanka. With only three examples in such a vast variety of scriptures, what the scriptures are telling us is stay away from anger. Because there is a very fine line whether you are using anger in Krishna's service or whether anger is using you in Maya's service. And the difference between these two is who is in control. So generally, when one becomes angry, you will notice that the person is out of control and he's talking anything and everything. Well, anger is in control. Anger is using you in Maya's service. And even if your intentions are correct, the relationship matters a lot and the execution also matters a lot. Otherwise, the other person may treat your anger as normal anger and he may permanently go away from Krishna. So how good is your using anger in Krishna's service? You didn't. Basically, stay away from anger. Prabhupada has clearly explained in multiple places, anger is very detrimental. Of course, there is a verse also in Srimad Bhagavatam which says no anger is not supported. So anger is there. You cannot just frisk away anger. That no anger is not supported verse is a heavy discussion in Srimad Bhagavatam. I'm not going to get into that right now. But basically, anger is very detrimental. Stay away from anger. Pratyush, does that help you?
So Prabhuji, because in life, of course, there are situations which will provocate you or which might anger you. In those situations, how do we dovetail the emotion of anger into devotional service?
You don't dovetail. I clearly said stay away from anger. And I will answer Ria's question about this point in a minute about dovetailing. When you get provoked, read Bhagavad Gita 16.21 right away and memorize this verse. Pratyush, you want to read 16.21 translation?
Sure, Prabhuji. 16.21. There are three gates leading to this hell: lust, anger, and greed. Every sane man should give this up, for they lead to the degradation of the soul.
Right? So these are royal roads to hell. Lust, anger, and greed. Do you want to go to hell?
No, Prabhuji.
So every time there is provocation, we already discussed in chapter 13, verses 8 to 12, use that opportunity to practice tolerance, to practice all the Bhagavad Gita qualities. Don't say, I am music in Krishna's service. Well, who is in control? You have to first judge that. And scriptures are clearly saying anger is very detrimental. Stay away from anger. Pratyush.
Makes sense, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Now, Ria's point on the same topic says, what happens when your tolerance is challenged by an atheist who talks wrong things about Krishna and his devotees? How do you control? So, in Srimad Bhagavatam, there are 3 steps given. That first is you defeat the blasphemer or the atheist based on scriptural strength, not by anger. When you are becoming angry on blasphemer, does not mean you scold that person or you shout at that person. No, the purpose of defeating the atheist and the blasphemer is to bring that person closer to Krishna. So if you shout back at that person, how is he going to be closer to Krishna? He will go far away from Krishna. So you have to be strong enough in scriptures to defeat, or defeat is a wrong word, rather to convince the blasphemer and the atheist to come closer to Krishna. The second step is, if you hear blasphemy against Krishna and his devotees, you commit suicide. It is actually described in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, in the first 7 chapters, where Sati committed suicide because Daksha blasphemed Shiva, a greatest Vaishnava. She committed suicide. But this is very difficult for us. The easiest is, if I cannot defeat, or if I not use the word defeat, if I cannot convince the blasphemer on the strength of scriptures, and I should not commit suicide, the easiest option is that you go away from that place. So I have nectar of instruction. This anger point comes up in text number 1. We will be covering nectar of instruction very, very soon. So every time there is provocation, you first find your trigger. That what is triggering your anger. Keep a journal and look backwards. What caused you anger? You will find a trigger. Everyone will have a different trigger. And as soon as next time you get provoked, that trigger should trigger in you that this is the trigger that causes me anger, and you don't let that trigger the anger. You immediately remember Bhagavad Gita 16.21. You walk away from the situation if it is possible. You chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra to calm your mind down. And then in a calm mind, come back and resolve that provocation situation. Pratyush, Riya, everybody?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, yes, that helps. But sometimes, Prabhuji, I think more than anger, it disturbs me internally. So I may not react. And then what happens is I just keep thinking about that. And that also, so if I'm not able to convince, then the next step is, okay, I know now that I should not react and get angry on that person. But then the next reaction is basically, then I'm suppressing it and it just starts eating me inside.
Yeah.
So
So
maybe, yeah,
where is your forgiveness quality?
yeah, true.
Right? So this forgiveness quality point, for those of you who are in Srimad Bhagavatam, in Canto 3, there's a significant long discussion coming up, almost a whole class on forgiveness quality. If you don't forgive, Ria described it perfectly, that she's burning inside. If you don't forgive, is like you are holding a burning piece of coal in your hand to hurl back onto that other person, not realizing that burning coal is burning you right now. So every time there is provocation, practice these qualities. Priya, does that answer?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Priya?
Yes, Prabhuji. Yes, thank you, Prabhuji.
So everybody find your trigger and look backwards. Finding the trigger, looking backwards is easy. That you make a journal. When did I become angry and what caused me to become angry? And on couple of points, when you note down, you will find a commonality. That this is common. This is what is triggering my anger. And I have given my personal example multiple times, and I'll repeat that this exercise of finding the trigger, I have found my trigger of what causes anger to me. So one time, at my workplace, for that work situation that Bhaktish Prabhu was probably describing, I was significantly angry, and I immediately went to my desk and I was typing so hard. My 2 cubicles down neighbor could hear me typing. I was typing so angrily that email. When I was typing that email, I realized my trigger. I said, wait a minute. This is the trigger that's caused me to become angry. So I continued writing the email. I just did not hit send because I was already angry. I said, okay, I will write the email. I made a commitment to myself that I am not going to hit send today. I will save the email in draft. Next morning, when I came and I read my email, and I was in shock. How could I have sent that email? I would have been in bigger trouble, even though the other person was at fault. But the way I worded the email in my angry mood, because I was not in control. Anger was in control. So next time when you get provoked, practice tolerance before you hit send or before you call or before you react. Walk away from that place. Read Bhagavad Gita 16.21. Chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Come down back to that situation in a calm mind. Then you will be in control. Then you can address the situation in a better way rather than anger. Because anger is very detrimental. Pratyush, Riya, Priya, everybody?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhuji.
All right.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, have undivided attention for this next quality. It's a spectacular discussion, and you're gonna listen to a 5-minute lecture from Chaitanya Chandas on this quality. And our next class, we will start by your reflections from that 5-minute lecture. So this very important quality is apaisunam, means aversion to fault finding. Devotees delight in glories of Krishna and glories of Krishna's devotees. Gossipers delight in finding faults of others. As well as gossipers spread fault of others. Very important distinction. I will repeat. Devotees delight in glories of Krishna and glories of Krishna's devotees. Gossipers delight in finding faults of others as well as spreading faults of others. For a godly person, he has to be averse to fault finding. The only time when we can speak about faults of others is when we do not get joy in talking about faults of others. Example, parents have to correct their children. Example, guru has to correct his disciple. Example, management has to correct some devotee. So these are some examples where the senior person is trying to correct someone, but that senior is not enjoying that corrective action. Yes, the child, the disciple, the devotee has to be corrected, but I am not enjoying that activity. As a necessity for the benefit of the devotee and others, for protecting others, we may have to speak about the faults of others. Only when we don't get joy in it, means we are not gossiping. We should laugh together with others. We should not laugh at others. Sometimes devotees get joy in condemning the karmis. This is wrong. Even if we want to talk about karmis, but that should not lead to hatred towards the karmis. Instead, the talking about karmis, instead of condemning the karmis, you should have compassion on karmis, as Srimad Bhagavatam describes. Why compassion? Is because karmis do not have information about Krishna's glories and Krishna's pastimes. Therefore, think of ways to engage karmis in Krishna's service, as Krishna has described in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, verse number 26, that do not disturb ordinary people. Just try to engage them in Krishna's service, as well as give prasadam to karmis. We should have compassion. We should see all people as parts and parcels of Krishna, and we should try to help them in whatever way we can. Finding faults with devotees can be offensive, or even finding faults with karmis. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, a prominent acharya, talks about not to criticize any living entity unnecessarily. Advanced devotee, the characteristics are that he has no inclination to criticize anyone. Because the devotee sees everyone's spiritual potential. Devotee wants to help develop everyone's spiritual potential. Now I'll explain these characteristics of advanced devotee having no inclination to criticize. We'll discuss this in Nectar of Instruction. That, say, at my workplace, I have some disagreement with my boss. I don't like the way my boss functions, meaning I have negative points, or I want to criticize the boss, but in fear I do not criticize. Meaning I do have inclination to criticize, but I am not criticizing just because I fear I may have negative consequences. But advanced devotees, they do not have any inclination to criticize at all. They only look at spiritual potential. Therefore, aversion to fault finding is to see the spiritual potency in others and help to develop their spiritual potency. So you will notice, for those of you who are in Toronto area, that our dear Vijay Prabhu, he will always talk about good qualities for others. Now, there is a particular devotee at the temple where it is next to impossible to find a good quality in that particular devotee. Vijay Prabhu even finds good qualities in that person. This is the characteristic of advanced devotee, that they do not look at faults. Even when there are faults, they look at good qualities even when there are no good qualities. And they magnify those good qualities because the devotees look at spiritual potential. Now, sometimes we may say that Srila Prabhupada used words like fools and rascals. These are words which are very strong. So how do you understand this? Or spiritual master sometimes chastises the disciple. How do you understand this? So yes, for the sake of our education, Srila Prabhupada and spiritual master would point out our misconceptions so that we can come out of bodily concept of life. But if Srila Prabhupada would have been a fault finder, then how could Srila Prabhupada have gone to hippies, stayed among the people, these hippies, whose only regulative principle was to break all regulative principles and doing all sorts of sinful activities? Srila Prabhupada not only lived among these hippies, rather Srila Prabhupada taught them. Srila Prabhupada fed them. Srila Prabhupada washed their plates. And Srila Prabhupada served them. How could Srila Prabhupada have done all this if Srila Prabhupada would have been a fault finder? No, Srila Prabhupada saw spiritual potency in the hippies. Srila Prabhupada saw the spiritual potency in others and fanned that spiritual potency and simultaneously neglected their conditioning. So these initial disciples, they were actually hippies. This is actually compassion of Srila Prabhupada. This is the godly quality of Srila Prabhupada. Now, this Prabhupada seeing the spiritual potency and fanning their spiritual potency, just as when you have a tiny little fire spark and you fan that spark so that the fire grows. Similarly, my spiritual master, his case Vaishyadas Adhikari, his website is also titled similarly, fanthespark.com. Exactly that. My spiritual master is also fanning the spiritual potency of every single devotee who comes by him, or even materialistic people who walk by him. The tendency to criticize or finding fault and to take pleasure in such things is the hallmark of material consciousness. Now, in the previous chapter 14, when I played the fire drill video, the person who actually set the fire as a learning experience. Now, some in the previous batch, they thought that this person was arrogant, causing problems for others. Actually, that person in the video was doing the fire drill only as a training exercise in a real unorthodox way. That's why the video that I played in chapter 14 starts by this person saying that PowerPoint slides are boring because people don't learn. And he used an unorthodox way to teach. So It's a very, very important quality that do not see faults in others. And even at the material world level, stop seeing faults in others, because if you see faults in others, little by little it translates into seeing faults in devotees and then going on to blaspheme devotees and blaspheme Krishna. I will pause here for questions, comments, realizations.
Prabhuji,
Yeah.
whenever I find someone is like finding fault in like people around me, I would correct that person, but instead they're actually finding faults with me. How do I deal with that?
Yeah. So when somebody finds fault in me, you actually thank them. Oh,
Okay.
thank you for pointing out my fault. Actually, I have lot many more faults. You only found one. Now, please also tell me, how do I correct this fault? So we have to realize I actually have a lot of faults. We have to take a humble position. If you counter, that person is only going to go back and forth in countering. It's not going to help you. You take a humble position. Actually, I have a lot more anarthas. You only found one. Now, can you please give me some suggestion? How do I cure my this anartha? Deepa?
Yes, Prabhuji, thank you. Good idea. Thank you.
Prabhuji,
Yeah.
Prabhuji, Hare Krishna. In the reverse case, just what Deepa said right now, if it is like that, if a person is doing some faulty things to become a good, having good character, is it not our duty to correct himself or help him to identify his faults?
So you all are going to get a very important practical spiritual endeavor in upcoming class. So I request Path Prabhu if you can park this question, because this is exactly answered in that upcoming spiritual endeavor. Is that okay to park?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, all right.
All right. Yeah, it's a very important inquiry and it will get addressed in it's a very, very important and a very practical spiritual endeavor coming up very, very soon in next couple classes. We'll definitely address that. Abhishek.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, when um, uh, like this point that we, if even if there is a small good quality, devotees tend to magnify it. So, like, is it like, I have two questions on this. One is that, is it a artificial gesture? And the second is that if we are magnifying it, is it a appropriate representation of situation uh,
So
and not
this,
something untruth? Yes.
yeah, so this is described in Srimad Bhagavatam 4.4.12. There are 4 positive qualities described and 4 negative qualities described with the words sadhu, mahatara, mahatma, and ati sadhu mahatma. And then there are negative points which are the opposite of these words, which are asadhu, amahatara, amahatma, and ati asadhu amahatma. So I will describe the characteristics. Sadhu means he accepts even faults in others because he knows that eventually the faults can be transformed into good qualities. Mahatara, is overlooks the faults and sees the good qualities. Mahatma takes small good qualities and magnifies them, not seeing the faults. And Ati Mahatma, he sees good qualities in others when there are none. So this Ati Mahatma is described as Shiva, that he takes demoniac people who have no good qualities, but he converts demoniac people, the ghostly people, into devotees. This is the greatest Vaishnava. This is his quality. And the negative qualities are asadhu. He thinks someone's good qualities will turn into faults. Asadhutara is he only sees faults, overlooking the good qualities. Asadhutama is he takes small faults and magnifies the faults without seeing the good qualities. And Ati Asadhu Atma is he sees only faults in others, even when there are no faults. So this is not artificial. Everyone is a spark of Krishna. Everyone has spiritual potency. We just have to fan that spiritual potency. Shiva is showing by his example, he is the greatest Vaishnava, that he is converting demoniac people into devotees. Abhishek?
That's very important disclaimer. Thank you.
So I'm going to send a 5-minute lecture on this topic of what does it mean when you see faults in others. I recommend all of you, if it is possible, to listen immediately, and you are gonna go in circles and you gonna go, wow. And our next class will start with you, every single one of you, bringing realizations from this 5-minute lecture, which is titled, When I See Faults in Others, What Does That Actually Mean? Everybody will bring their realizations.
Yes.
All right, only some of you.
Yes, Prabhuji.
All right, we are just past 10:30 p.m. Toronto time. We'll finish the rest of the points in this 1 to 3 verse in our next class. But we will start with, in our next class, we will start with you all explaining your realizations from the short lecture title, what the faults of others we see, what does that mean? Hare Krishna, everybody.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
So,